and welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and video show which brings you leadership lessons, knowledge and experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe so you won't miss a new episode. I'm your host, Frits Bussemaker, and today I'm delighted to have a conversation with Dr. Bilel Jamoussi. Bilel, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Frits, for having me.
And allow me to introduce you to our audience. Well, we've had you before a couple of years ago, but there's a very relevant reason why we want to invite you back. But to give you the full picture, you are from Tunisia. You're currently the Deputy Director and Chief of Telecommunications Standard Policy at the International Telecommunications Union. But you've actually lived all over the world, in Tunisia, Canada, the US, Switzerland. So you have a global perspective on what's happening. You are an engineer by background, have a PhD in computer engineering, and the US has granted you over 22 patents. So that's the background. But the reason I wanted to come back to you is the ITU, the International Telecommunications Union, is actually coming to India next month for the World Telecommunications Standardization Assembly. So I want to talk about what that means, because it's not just that, it's, I'll say, the whole package of what ITU has to offer seems to be coming to India. Am I right to say it like that?
Absolutely. It's going to be an international standards festival, if you will.
Okay. Well, before we move into that, a little bit about yourself. I just gave people, you could say, the briefest highlight of your background. But how does one end, how does one become an employee of a UN agency? What's your route to get here?
I think so. The road for me to get here was through the higher education and through working in the private sector on a topic that is very much needed by the ITU standards, which is one of the three pillars or three sectors of the ITU. We have the standardization sector, the radio communication sector, and the development sector. And the fact that standards development really brings industry primarily, but also in the ITU context, governments play a critical role and make ITU a unique standards development organization, because we have 194 member states as of this year. We have Palau as a new member state.
Yeah.
So that road requires, of course, in the standards context, deep technical knowledge, understanding the technologies, sort of a CTO level, chief technology officer in a company. It requires a significant amount of diplomacy. You need to negotiate, you need to understand 193 countries, where they're coming from, what are their needs. Some are developed, some are developing. You also need to understand the business context of the technology and the geopolitical framework. So there is a lot of things at play to be able to lead this work in a UN system in the ITU. You have to be multilingual, because you need to engage with people from different regions with different languages, have the cultural affinity and the understanding of different cultures and the diversity that comes with cultures and gender and youth. So it's a multi-dimensional skill set that I'm happy that I was able to, throughout my career path, as you mentioned, living in different countries and so on, been able to pick up a lot of some of these important tools to be able to navigate this very complex.
Okay. Yeah. Now, looking at your career, you've spent 15 years working for companies like Bell and Nortel, telco providers. At what stage did you realize, hey, I'm going to make a career switch? I'm actually going to move to a UN agency. Did they call you, or did that idea pop up in your head?
I think it was a mix. There was a call for director of study groups at the time in 2010 in the ITU. It was also an inflection point in the industry. If you remember, 2008, 2009 was a lot of turmoil in the telecom industry overall. And so it was an opportunity for a career change. And I had the background as a director of standards at Nortel. The ITU needed a chief of study groups working on standards. So it was more or less of a seamless transfer. I was a customer of the ITU as IT as a private sector, and I became a service provider from the ITU.
Great. Okay, now standards. What for you is appealing, or what makes a discussion or working with standards so attractive for you?
It's the global impact. You and I communicate now on a Zoom call, and we're able to do that because the companies that are building all of the pieces that make our communication possible need to agree on a framework, need to agree on a standard, a technical standard that allows all companies to build products, and when they connect them together, it works. And because each company is compliant to the standard, then our operation is possible. For example, one of the ITU standards that is now being used is the video compression algorithm, or video compression codec compression decompression, and that's being used for 80% of the internet traffic. So that is the global impact that is appealing. So when you put all of those skills, the technical background, the business needs, the diplomacy, the negotiation, the patents, all of it, when you mix it all up, the output is something that the entire world uses in a seamless fashion without even thinking that there are hundreds of standards behind it.
Yeah, because given my technical background, I'm aware of what standards can bring, but also for the general public, I like to make people aware that without those standards, we can't have this call, we can't talk, we can't share an email and a document with each other. Now, maybe a bit too technical, but I'm curious. A lot of the products and services we're using, like you just mentioned, is a commercial product. I would assume that they also have a say in what the standard should be. So what's the balance between what an international institute describes and how much impact does the commercial entity have, and what's happening in that power play?
Excellent question. So basically you're asking how are standards developed and who developed the standard? So in our context in the ITU, we provide the platform, the study groups, we call them, for industry, and we have today 1,000 industry members in the ITU. We provide the platform to governments, and we have the 194 governments, as well as to universities and academia research institutes who develop all of these advanced technologies and have all the intellectual property behind it. And we have about 200 universities from around the world. It is this group of people that comes together in a meeting with contributions, with paper or Word documents and so on, and say, I have a proposal to solve the problem this way. And another company says, I have a proposal to solve the problem this other way. And they all find a common agreement at the end, and that's the consensus building process, and that's the negotiation process. So all of our standards are really driven by industry. And that's where the industry engagement is being one of the key elements in making sure that all the stakeholders are around the table, and governments are there because they have to regulate and implement. And so when there is regulatory implications, governments may say, I'm not sure this is really the best way to approach it. There may be some considerations that we need to provide input in, like cybersecurity or numbering, the international numbering. Your telephone number is given by ITU to the regulator of the country, and then the country regulates the numbering within its domain. And that's why it has regulatory implications. So these are examples that some are purely technical and some are a mix of technical and regulation.
Okay. Now, if that's the way regulation standards are organized, a question which pops up into my mind is, to what extent can commercial entities benefit from accepting or holding back standards, and is that an issue?
The companies benefit from a number of angles. One of them is, of course, the patents. Companies come to standards with innovative ideas. They usually have patents that have been filed and granted on the topic. And if the standard is agreed, that includes their patents, and we have a process for them to do patent declarations, those standards essential patents become incredibly valuable because every company that is implementing the standard is clearly using that patent. And then there are negotiations outside of the ITU to have reasonable and non-discriminatory royalties between companies. So that's number one in terms of pure tech and R&D. The other benefit for companies to be around the table and implement standards is the global market. So because if they want to deploy their products, operators, the network operators and governments usually require the vendor to comply to international standards. And so if they're implementing our standards, they have an easy way to sell the product in those markets.
Oh, yeah. So okay, let me move on to another topic here, because one of the things we see is that the development of technology is fast, of digital technology. It seems that a new product or service is almost available each week. And you mentioned that standards are obtained through, you could say, discussion and agreement. So you have to negotiate. So that is a longer term process. So what do you do in the meantime between those very fast developing technologies and the time you need to take to develop, okay, what are the standards? So there's that gap there. What do we do about that gap?
Excellent question. So there are two types of standards. There is hardware standards, take time to build and manufacture. And those companies need to get right before they go to production. So those standards, they take their time and they make sure the fiber optic link and the fiber optic equipment on both ends is purely interoperable. And that's where proper time is taken. Usually in the about a year and a half, you can come to an agreement on some of these very important fiber optic standards. Then you have the software standards. And that's where you have more agility, you have more speed. And what we have done recently is that we engaged with the open source community, because a lot of that software that is standardized is being implemented in open source, because companies don't really make money on something that's not differentiable. Like some of the basic standard stuff, they all implement together in an open source platform. And then they build value on top of it. And so over the past few years in the ITU, we've been working very closely with the open source community. Recently, we launched, for example, the Open Wallet Forum, which is a partnership between ITU and the Linux Foundation to bring open wallets, digital wallets to the world. And so that's an example of agility. By having open source and standards work hand in hand, we can reduce that gap and be able to go to market much faster.
Got it. Okay. A couple more questions on standards, which intrigue me. First of all, when should you start a discussion on standards? And I'm just thinking of the emerging technologies. At the moment, as far as I'm aware, we don't have any commercial examples of a quantum computer and quantum technology or the quantum internet, but we know it's on the horizon. We already see this being covered. At what point do you decide, okay, now let's develop a standard for that? But then again, could a standard hold back innovation? So can you discuss that a little bit?
Absolutely. In fact, quantum has many aspects. So there's the quantum computing, there is the quantum metrology or measurement, there is the quantum networking or quantum security. And these areas of what we call as quantum information technologies are at different stages of advancement and commercial availability. The first one that came to us in the ITU was the quantum key distribution, which is the use of quantum technology to encrypt traffic. And this actually came to us in 2019, where a few startups here in Geneva and other places were creating a protocol to exchange quantum keys to encrypt the traffic over fiber optic networks. And we invited them to all come together and do the work in ITU. And within 6 months, they published a standard on quantum key distribution. And today, many operators around the world are implementing it. So that area, I think, is well under control. And having an international environment like ITU with both governments and private sector allowed us to move fast. The example you gave on quantum computers there are some availabilities of commercial quantum computers. We will be unveiling some questions in India. There's actually a few quantum companies that will be part of our global standard symposium and also our digital wave stage in India. And so that is advancing also. On the quantum metrology, that's perhaps more there's a bit more work to be done to be commercially available. So I think, with those three phases or three categories in mind and the different phases, we can see that industry and international standards organizations like ITU can move fast to provide something that is dependable to the governments and also to the operators implementing it.
Okay. Final question before I move to the event in India, the upcoming event. Could you take us along the relationship between standards, guidelines, policy frameworks? Is there a relationship? And if yes, what is that relationship?
There is direct relationship. In order to put some policy and guidelines in place, you need to have some international framework in place. And an excellent example is the whole discussion on artificial intelligence today.
Yes.
I'll give you a very concrete example that is top of mind. Deepfakes, AI-generated videos, AI-generated images, text. Every policymaker around the world is grappling with that, and especially the countries that are going through elections this year. I think almost 2 billion people are going to ballot for votes in 76 countries, if I remember the number correctly. And the candidates are, victims of deepfakes. And so there has been a discussion at the AI for Good Summit here during the Governance Day in May on what can we do as an international community to address this. And it was clear that we needed international standards so that governments can implement them as policies within, as voluntary standards or as regulation and policy. And during the summit, we launched a collaboration with ISO and IEC, C2PA, and various other IEEE and other standards organizations on combating deepfakes by having multimedia authenticity and watermarking solutions. And since then, since May, we have advanced very rapidly with our partners. We published a report on how solutions are available, standard solutions are available to detect deepfakes, and also how to watermark some of the multimedia. And we will also be featuring this big time in India as part of our GSS and WTSA.
Yeah. Okay, just to sum up so I get this clear, could I then summarize it that we need to have a standard to define what we need to regulate?
How to regulate? We need the standard as a tool. It is a tool to be able to regulate something. Another example in the climate discussion, and we're gearing up to COP29. If you can't measure the greenhouse gas emission of ICT products, we cannot really have a conversation about how to reduce the emission. And so the ITU with ETSI and other partners, the European Telecom Standards Institute, developed a suite of standards on measuring the greenhouse gas emission of the telecom and ICT infrastructure, and how to reduce it, and how to also use ICT as a mitigation of the consumption of energy by other sectors. So that's another suite of standards that is very topical now.
Now, thank you for giving that example, because I do put that very much puts why we need standards into perspective and why they're so important. Now, okay, let's end with the trip to India, the WTSA India. It will host a lot of side events. What's going to happen there?
The World Telecom Standards Assembly is something we hold every 4 years to really guide the work of the ITU and get input from governments and sector members or the private sector. What are the top priorities for the next year? We appoint all of the chairs of the study groups. We have 10 study groups that we'll be appointing chairs to, as well as vice chairs from the 6 regions of the ITU, from Europe, the Americas, Asia Pacific, the Arab states, the African states, and the RCC countries. So it's really international. So those are the key mandates of the WTSA: set the priority, elect the chairs, and also agree on resolutions on what we're going to work on. And now we have 13 new proposals on, as you can imagine, all the topical AI, the metaverse, digital public infrastructure, digital ID. Everything that is top of mind to industry and the governments is on the table for discussion at WTSA. This will be the first time we go to Asia with WTSA. India is hosting this. India has been a great host in preparing for this event. We will have an exclusive use of the G20 facilities that were built just a couple of years ago to host G20 in India, in New Delhi. We will have use of the Leaders Summit Room, where all the heads of states and government met for G20 to have a high-level discussion between ministers and CEOs of companies on the priorities of standardization for the next year. We have many side events on the AI International Standards Summit. We bring all of our partners. We kick it off at the Global Standards Symposium, a number of sessions in the digital wave stage. Every day during lunch, we have a digital wave stage where, as people go to lunch and come back, in that 2-hour window, jump in and see a very unique set of speakers talk about various aspects of standards and technology. And then we kind of wrap up the AI International Summit at the AI Impact India, which is the first edition of our AI Impact series being held for one day in India. And that's really to kick off the skill set development around AI. It's one thing to have the standards and the policies, but AI is also a danger to widen the gap, the digital gap between developed and developing countries. And so we have taken that very seriously as the ITU, as the UN specialized agency for digital technology, to work with our UN partners, WHO on the health, digital health, with the Food and Agriculture Organization on digital agriculture or precision agriculture, with the World Meteorological Organization on AI for natural disaster management. With all of these UN partners, we are really meeting together in India to showcase the work that we have done together and the journey that we need to continue.
Yeah, I also saw that you're going to speak at the AI for Good breakout session. What will you be talking about?
Which one of the breakout? We have many breakouts.
Yes. Well, there's one where you will be speaking at AI for Good.
Yes. I will be speaking about the AI Standards Summit.
Okay, yeah.
Because that's where we're coming together with ISO, with IEC, with IEEE, the Internet Engineering Task Force, ICANN, and the European Telecom Standards Institute to launch this work on the AI International Standard and the Standards Exchange, which is something that the Global Digital Compact that was approved last week at the UN by heads and states of government calls for a coordinated approach of AI standards, and we are very well positioned to convene this conversation.
Good. Now, because I was looking at the agenda and I see great topics, fascinating, like life-saving robots, how to use AI for agriculture. You mentioned precision agriculture, but I also saw a topic on brain-computer interfacing. That sounds very science fiction, and maybe to layman very scary. So that brings me the question, the fact that you have technology capable of doing something, do you actually want to pursue that technology or not? Is that the discussion when you set standards or not?
It is a very good question, but the use of brain-machine interface has been demonstrated to be very useful with people with disabilities. People who may not have the ability to, may not have limbs or have difficulty speaking or other ways. We actually showed an example at the AI for Good Summit here in Geneva this year in May of a tweet that was written by BMI, Brain Machine Interface, and it went viral in the internet. So there is some very good use, and that's why we focus on AI for good, to showcase some of these applications of inclusivity for the billion people with various disabilities. My own son has Down syndrome, and the use of information communication technology has been a great help for him in learning, in expressing himself, in communicating. So we see AI as the next frontier to enable that further engagement by people with various accessibility needs. But the other angles of inclusivity that we will celebrate in New Delhi is the network of women, because we need to ensure that women are participating at a leadership level in standards development, and that the number of women participating is at parity. Today, we're at about 30% registration, and our target is 35%. So it's a call to have more women present in our WTSA, and also to have more leaders. A third angle of inclusivity is youth and standards, and that's why we have the challenge on robotics, is to bring the youth to standards through a challenge, through a game, because youth, they love gaming, and we're talking about youth in the high school to university, and even young professors. We also have an academia conference called Kaleidoscope that will be held in New Delhi. And that's our approach to be inclusive on the youth, on women with the network of women in standards, and with the BMI on a focus on accessibility and engagement of people with disabilities.
Bilel, one final question for you, because you're describing lots of fascinating discussions and talks taking place in New Delhi. Will the general public be able to follow this? If they say, hey, I'm interested, or can they sign up? And if so, how do they do that?
Many of our side events are open to live streaming. So even if you're not in New Delhi, you'll be able to follow the AI Impact India, the Network of Women, the Kaleidoscope. Many of the sessions are being live streamed. If you happen to be in New Delhi and want to join, and you're part of the member states or any of the private sector, you can get on the national delegation. If they allow you, you can join in person.
Okay, great. So great opportunity for anybody out there in the area, or even if you want to watch online, it's possible. Bilel, I want to thank you so much for sharing with us, first of all, why we need standards, what's behind the standards, and how it's influencing virtually everybody around us in this world. Without them, we won't be talking. And I wish you success, a very great conference. The first time you're going to be in India. Hope it's going to be a great success. And also, hopefully, we'll see the outcome and results in the future of what those standards will bring us. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Fritz.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.